Good morning, students. I am Dr. P. Benjamin Rozario, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, St.Joseph's College of Arts and Science, Autonomous, Cuddalore. I am going to teach you the objectives of auditing. Before going into the objectives of auditing, let me explain about definition of auditing. According to Montgomery, a leading American accountant and author, had defined auditing as a systematic examination of the books and records of a business or other organization in order to ascertain or verify and report upon the facts regarding the financial operations and the results thereof. So the auditor is verifying the records and all the books of accounts in a systematic manner with a view to check whether the records and the financial statements are revealing the fact. So it is possible that the accountant would have made some mistakes as human error. So those things could be identified by the auditor when he is verifying the records in a systematic manner. So the objective of the auditing is to check the accuracy of the records which is maintained by the company and to reveal whether the financial statements are prepared by following the accounting procedures. So this is what auditing. Next, let me go on the objectives of auditing. So in any activities, whatever is being carried out by the person, there will be some objectives to be fulfilled. So without having aim or without having objectives, no activities will be taking place. So likewise, there are some objectives for conducting the auditing also. So here the objectives have been classified into two major categories. One is main objectives and another one is subsidiary objectives. So the main objective of auditing is to find out whether the accounts of a particular concern show a true and a fair view of the earning and financial state of affairs. So any business which is taking place in the market, their main objective is to earn profit. So a person who is doing business may not be able to have the knowledge on accounting. So the businessman is appointing the accountant for carrying out or for maintaining the accounting records, and there is a possibility that the accountant would have made some mistakes as errors, which means without his intention to make those errors, or the accountant would have made some frauds, which means the errors would have been committed or made by the accountant purposely in order to cheat the owner of the company. So if the accounting records is being verified by the external expert, which will ensure or which can be relied upon by the businessman whether the accountant have prepared the accounts properly or not. So, the main objective of auditing is to find out whether the accounting records are showing the true and fair view of the statements. Then these are some of the main or primary objectives. First one is examination of the books of accounts and records with a view to test the arithmetical accuracy and correctness in recording of transaction and their reliability. So in this, the auditor is examining the books of accounts in order to ascertain whether the accounts have been prepared without having any arithmetical errors. Then second one is verify that the balance sheet and the profit and loss account are drawn in conformity with the books of accounts and records. Then third one, ascertain that proper accounting principles and procedures and management policies are followed by the accountant while recording the transactions which took place in the business concern. So these are some of the main and primary objectives of conducting the auditing by the businessman. And then we move about the secondary objectives. So here the auditing is conducted in order to check or in order to find out if there is any errors and frauds has been carried out or committed by the accountant. So in that first second subsidiary objective is detecting and preventing of errors. Then second one is reduction and prevention of frauds. So as I have explained earlier, errors is mistakes committed by the accountant while recording the transactions in the records without his intention or without his involvement, by mistakes he would have committed. So those are errors. Whereas the frauds is a mistake committed by the accountant knowingly, purposefully in order to cheat the owner of the company. So these things can be identified by the auditor when he is verifying the records and accounts in a systematic manner. So this is what explaining about the objectives of auditing. As we have seen earlier, main objectives in order to examine the reliability and validity of the financial statements so as to render an opinion on the truth and fairness of the presentation in those statements. In these subsidiary objectives, there are two classifications: reductions and prevention of errors, and then second one, reduction and prevention of frauds. In the errors itself, there are a few classifications. One is clerical error, second one is errors of principle, third one is compensating error, then fourth one is errors of duplications. In the clerical error, the accountant would have made mistakes by entering the transactions without his intention. Those are errors of omission and errors of commission. Errors of commission is nothing but while recording the transactions with the supported documents, which means with the vouchers, the accountant would have left any transaction without recording it in the books of account. But those vouchers or bills would have been attached with the other supporting documents. So which can be identified by the auditor if he is going for vouching, which means verifying the records or transaction with the supported document. So in that, the auditor will be able to find out if there is anything is left out or which is omitted, which is not recorded in the books of accounts. Then second one is errors of commission. Errors of commission is nothing but the accountant would have recorded the transaction, but while entering the amount, the accountant would have entered the amount incorrectly, Either it can be more than the actual amount or it can be less than the actual amount. For example, the actual amount of that particular transaction may be 252, while recording it, the accountant would have recorded 225. So, which means he had entered the amount incorrectly. So, that is what errors of commission. And this can be identified or detected by the auditor when he is verifying those transactions with supported documents, which is vouchers. And then second one is errors of principle. So in this, the accountant would have recorded all the transactions in the books of accounts, and he would have recorded the amount also properly, but he would have not followed the accounting principles, which means in double entry system, for one particular transaction, one account needs to be debited and another account needs to be credited. For example, if the businessman is receiving cash from Mr. Arun, in that aspect, cash account needs to be debited and Arun account needs to be credited. So, in this, in the errors of principle, the accountant would have debited the Arun account and he would have credited the cash account. So, this is what errors of principles, which means the accountant would have not followed the accounting principles while recording the transaction. And then errors of compensating error, which means error would have been committed by the person in order to compensate the error which is already made. So as we have seen earlier in the errors of commission or in the errors of omission, in the errors of commission, the accountant would have entered the less than the actual amount. So the remaining amount will be there in the business itself. So in order to show that remaining amount into the account, actually the transaction would have not taken place, but those, in order to compensate that error, the accountant would have recorded one more entry in order to compensate that error. So that is what errors of compensating error. And then errors of duplication, in that the accountant would have recorded the same transaction more than one time in the books of accounts by mistakes. So this is what errors of duplication. And then second error, subsidiary objectives is reduction and prevention of frauds. So as I have explained earlier, fraud is the mistake committed by the accountant knowingly with his involvement in order to cheat the owner of the company. So in that, first one is reduction and embezzlement of cash. In this, the accountant would have recorded the less than the actual amount, or the accountant would have not recorded the particular transaction itself, and that amount would have been taken by him from the company. So this is the fraud which is made by the person. This can be identified by the auditor if he is doing the verification in a systematic manner. And then misappropriation of goods. So this is the fraud made against the goods. So especially when the small quantity of goods which is having the higher value, those goods would have been stolen by the accountant, or those goods would have been taken by the accountant, and that would have not recorded in the books of accounts. So misappropriation of goods is fraud made against the goods. And then fraudulent manipulation of accounts. So the accountant would have made fraud in recording the transaction itself. So he would have made some corrections or modification in the recording of amounts. So that is what fraudulent manipulation of accounts. So these are some of the major objectives of conducting the auditing. I hope that this video would have enlightened you in order to understand what are the objectives of conducting the auditing. Thank you all.